Hello and welcome back once again. So it's that time of year again where I go through and talk about the movies from 2016 that I liked and didn't like and kind of put them all together into a list. But before we get to that, I'm going to go through the list of movies that I wanted to see but for one reason or another couldn't get around to seeing this year. So we're starting with the unseen list of 2016. So this is a shorter list than last year because I actually did see quite a few movies this year. And the first movie on this year's list is 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, I believe is what the subtitle was. Now, the reason I didn't get around to seeing this, one, I wasn't 100% interested in it. It seemed sort of interesting, but at the same time, it's one of those war-based films, and as you guys know from my previous reviews, I'm not that into war-based films. So this one just kind of kept getting pushed to the back burner in favor of other things until it was finally out of the theater, and I just never happened to catch up on it. The next movie on the unseen list for 2016 goes to Kung Fu Panda 3. I probably would have gotten around to seeing this one just for the review, but I never saw the second Kung Fu Panda, and I don't 100% remember finishing the first one. I know I started watching the first one, but whether or not I finished it, I'm not 100% sure. So watching the third one, missing half of the first one and the entire second one, just didn't really make much sense. Next on the list is Risen. Now, normally I try to stay away from the religious films of the year, the Kirk Cameron films, and like God's Not Dead and all that type of stuff. But there are a select few biblical-based films that I will watch. And Risen seemed like it was going to be fairly interesting without really trying to force the whole God is real, heaven is real thing down your throat the way some of those other movies do. It just kind of seemed like it was, in a sense, a sequel to The Passion of the Christ, which I now hear is actually getting its own sequel, so that could be interesting, but for one reason or another, I just kept putting this one off as well and just never got around to seeing it. Next on the list is Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, or WTF. I have no idea what this movie was about. I saw one preview for it, and it looked vaguely interesting, and I jotted it down on the list of things to eventually check out. And by the time this one popped up in the theater, I was like, why does that sound familiar? And I went back and looked through my list. I was like, oh, I was going to see it at some point for some reason. I wrote it down and just couldn't really remember what it was about. So, again, got pushed to the back burner in favor of other stuff. And sadly, that one was in and out of the theater fairly quickly, so just never really got around to seeing it. Next on the list is the Divergent series Allegiant, which is the third in the Divergent series. As I stated last year, I originally never saw Divergent, but as I said in last year's video, I did finally see Divergent, and I needed to watch Insurgent before Allegiant came out, and I just never got around to it. So, similar situation with Kung Fu Panda 3, since I missed the second film, can't really watch the third one. Oh, and also, relating back to last year's film when I asked about the fourth book in the series being called 4, apparently 4 is the name of one of the characters in the film, so the fourth book is actually that character's story and doesn't really necessarily relate directly to the rest of the series. So it's not technically the fourth in the series, it's kind of an amendment or a side story that kind of fits into the same universe but isn't part of the direct story. So whether or not we're going to get a 4 movie, I'm not sure. But that's a side tangent. Next movie on the list is The Boss. The Boss is a film I had planned on seeing. It looked semi-funny. I believe it was Melissa McCarthy. And her stuff's kind of hit and miss with me, but this one looked like it was going to be okay. Unfortunately, it was playing at the theater across town, and this was at a point when I was on a low with my financial issues of the year, and just never got across town to see it. Actually, I believe it was when I was having issues with my car and couldn't really make the trip across town. So yeah, that one just kind of slipped away. The next movie on the list, similarly to The Boss, The Jungle Book, was only playing at the theater across town, came out right around the same time as The Boss, just never really got around to it. And then once it opened at the theater closer to my house, I just really didn't care anymore. Live-action Disney films I haven't been as excited about as I originally thought I was going to be back when, like, Cinderella first came out, the live-action version. I still haven't seen that, and it was on my list from last year. So these live-action versions, I just haven't really been focusing too much on. And, yeah, just never really got around to seeing it and didn't really care. And by the time I had a chance to see it, it was gone. I've had a chance to see it after that and just couldn't be bothered to watch it. So there you go, missed that. Next up on the list is Popstar Never Stop, Never Stopping. This is a movie I saw the preview for, and I was like, okay, that looks like it's going to be funny. It's the Lonely Island guys. I kind of like their stuff. And then I just completely forgot about it. And I kept seeing advertisements for it at the theater, and I was like, what is Popstar? Why does that sound familiar? But at the same time, I was like, oh, it's about a pop star or some type of boy band or something, and I just had no desire to watch it. And then it wasn't until right around the time it got pulled from the theater that I actually saw another preview for it on TV, and I was like, oh crap, I did want to see that. And unfortunately, it was too late. It got pulled the day before I went to see it. So, missed Popstar. Next on the list is The Legend of Tarzan. Again, kind of falls into that whole live-action Disney film, although this is supposed to be more of a sequel to a either existent or non-existent live-action version of the story at some point. I was never really a big fan of Tarzan. Kind of the same, I think that's kind of what threw me off with the Jungle Book as well, is once you've seen the story, you don't really need to keep seeing it. But then I heard that this was actually a sequel. It takes place years later after Tarzan has left the jungle and now he has to come back. And it just really didn't intrigue me enough to go see it. It was on my list of stuff to watch, but it was always kind of back burner to other things. And then when it came time to see it, I just had other things I'd rather spend money on, and it just went away, which seems to be the case with most of these. I just got to the point where I just didn't care to watch the movie anymore. The next movie on the list is Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. First couple previews I saw for this looked really funny, looked like it was going to be a decent comedy. I had planned on seeing it, then I started to see more previews for it, and it just looked kind of like a dumb stoner comedy. And I just got to the point where I was like, do I really want to watch this or not? And I hesitated on it way too long and missed the boat on it. So it's still on my list of things to watch because I heard it was actually really funny, but usually the things people say are funny, I end up not finding funny. So I'll still probably watch it at some point, but I have a feeling it's going to be one of those cases of you saw all the funny bits in the preview, which wasn't a whole lot. Next on the list is Ice Age Collision Course. Another one of those films where I just haven't kept up on the Ice Age series. Otherwise, I probably would have went and saw it. I think I watched the first two. Ended up to like 15 now with this one. Preview for it looked like it'd be interesting. Looks like it's continuing the story, but I have no idea where the story's at anymore. So to go into it would have made no sense unless I can catch up on things. Next on the list is 9 Lives. 9 Lives looked interesting from the first preview. Kind of had that 80s feel to it, which I really like 80s stuff, from a nostalgic standpoint. But then the more and more and more that I saw previews for it, I was like, why am I going to see this? It really didn't appeal to me as much as it initially did from the first preview, and when it came time to see it, I actually figured I would just go see something else. Next on the list is Pete's Dragon, the live-action remake. I did go to see this movie, actually, but when I got there, turned out the show times that were on the website were different than what was actually at the theater, so I ended up missing like the first 25 minutes of it, and I was just like, there's no point in trying to figure out what's going on, even though I know the story. I'd like to catch it from the beginning if I'm going to watch it, so I went and exchanged the ticket for something else that was getting ready to start, watched whatever that was that day, I don't even remember, and figured I'd get back around to it, and within like the next couple days it was already gone, so just never got back around to that. Next movie is War Dogs, the Jonah Hill movie. Again, something looked interesting in the preview, and then as I thought about it more, it's a war-based movie. Yeah, it's kind of a comedy, but I've seen this type of movie before where the people sell weapons. There was a Nicolas Cage movie about it a few years back. It was kind of the start of the first Iron Man movie. He was selling weapons to foreign parties, and this just kind of seemed like it was going to start out interesting and then kind of take a downward turn. And again, just kind of put it on the back burner of something that I'll eventually see, and just never got back around to it. Next movie on the list is The Mechanic Resurrection. Again, this is just a case of it. The preview looked awesome. It's a Jason Statham movie. Wanted to see it. Then I realized it was a sequel to The Mechanic, which I've never seen. At least I don't think I have. So without seeing The Mechanic, it's not really fair to go into The Mechanic Resurrection and judge it without knowing what's going on in the story. Next one up is Hands of Stone, a movie, I believe, about a boxer of some sort. I remember seeing previews for it, saying, hey, that looks cool. Didn't realize it opened. By the time I realized it was open and planned to go see it, gone. It was only there for a week, maybe two, that I know of, so just never got around to seeing that one. Next one on the list is Sully. Sully came at a point when I was back in another dip with my financial situation and just had to kind of put movie viewing on hold for a little while, and it just happened to be the same week Sully opened, and I really wanted to see it, but then, you know, when you weigh the options of, do you want to eat today, do you want to put gas in the car, do you want to see Sully, you know, one of those things has to give, and unfortunately in this case it's Sully. The next movie on the list was The Disappointments Room. I only saw one preview for this, and I vaguely remember it, but something about it caught my attention, and I have heard good things about it from other people. Unfortunately, this was another one that was in and out of the theater within like a week, so as soon as I heard that it opened, made plans to go see it, and it was already gone. It has popped up over at the Dollar Theater, but I never got a chance to get over there to see it either. So this one's still on the list of things to eventually watch. It just didn't make it into the review session for this year. The next movie on the list is The Girl on the Train. Originally never heard anything about this movie, but a friend of mine asked me if I had seen it, and I said no. And they had recommended it, saying it was really good, and kind of described the plot of it. And it does sound kind of interesting, but at the same time, I don't always 100% agree with this friend's view on films. So it's on the list of things to eventually watch, but it's one of the ones I ended up missing this year. The next item on the list was Middle School, Worst Years of My Life. Not sure what appealed to me about this movie. I kind of like high school comedy type of films like this, so even though it's middle school based, I was like, you know, I liked Superbad, I liked things like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, you know, just those whole high school angsty kind of comedy films. And I was like, hopefully that's what this is. And I was going to go see it based on that. And then as I thought about it, I was like, is it really going to be that funny because it's based in middle school rather than high school? And I just really couldn't take the chance on it at the time. So didn't get around to seeing it. The next one up was Bleed for This, another boxing movie, I believe. And honestly, from the preview of this didn't really draw my attention that much. The only reason I was going to see this one was because it was at a time when I had kind of caught up on all the other films and there was nothing else out at the time to go see, and nothing else was going to open for like another 2 weeks. And I was like, well, there's Bleed for This, I guess I can go see that. And then just decided against it. So it was on my list of things to watch at some point, but didn't make it to it, so now it's on the list of things I didn't see. And that kind of brings us to the end of the main list, but there are a few more films that I'm going to mention real quick, but they are still technically in the theaters, and even though I would have been seeing them after the end of the year in 2017, they're technically still 2016 films, so I won't be able to count them towards next year's list or this year's list because I haven't seen them yet. But I had a couple others with that this year. I think The Revenant was a 2015 film that I saw at the beginning of 2016, and there was like one or two others on the list today that I was looking at that were last year's films that got on this year's playlist but aren't going to be featured anywhere on the top or bottom lists of the year. So the movies that are still playing that I might still go see at some point and do reviews on: The Edge of 17. It's out of the main theater, but it did just open over at the Dollar Theater, so I still may get over to see that. Again, you know, high school angsty type of film, and a lot of people have been comparing it to John Hughes films, and I used to love John Hughes as a kid, all his films, so if it's really living up to that tradition, I still kind of want to see it. Don't know if I'll make it over there to see it or not. If not, then it's on this list. If I do, then you'll eventually see a review for it, maybe a fast-forward edition, just because it is kind of old at this point. Another one that's still playing at the main theater, surprisingly, because it's been out for quite a while, is Manchester by the Sea. And I can't really remember what this movie is about, but I did see a preview for it, and I was like, oh, what movie is this? It seems interesting, and then I saw it was Manchester by the Sea, and I was like, I think that's out already. And I went and looked, and it's still playing at the theater. It's just not at the one I normally go to. It's one across town that keeps movies for extended periods of time for some reason. So I may still get around to seeing that one, but it's at the bottom of my list. Other movies will probably take priority over top of it, such as the next movie, which I was going to try and squeeze in for the end of the year. Right after I watched Assassin's Creed, I was going to go see this film, but I was really tired that day and just decided, screw it, I'm going home. I'll watch it next year, and I'm not too worried about it, because honestly, I could care less about this film. It doesn't really look that interesting. I was mostly just going to watch it for the review of it, and that is Sing, not a Disney Pixar film, not a DreamWorks film. Not sure if this is a new company or some other company that I'm just not recognizing. It's a CGI anthropomorphic animals singing movie, and just, I don't know. I'll see it just because I watch kids movies, just because I occasionally like kids movies. Sometimes they have a good message to them, other times they're just fun to watch. So I'll watch it for that sake, but I'm not going into it expecting to like it. But you may see a review for that sometime in the next week or so, if I get around to seeing it. If not, then it's on the list of things I missed this year. And the final one for this year of the unseen list is Why Him? Again, this just opened a couple weeks ago, so I'll still probably get around to reviewing it. But I'm almost hesitant to go watch it because it stars James Franco, and I really, really, really hate James Franco. He's such a shit actor. I can't stand him. And this looks like it just plays up to all his stupid comedy. And I have a feeling I'm not going to like it. The only reason I'm drawn into seeing it is the character that plays the father, I believe, is also the guy from Breaking Bad, if I'm remembering right. And his bits in the preview look like it's actually pretty funny, but he's playing against James Franco, who I don't find funny at all. So I'm really hesitating to go see this movie. I probably could have saw this one quite a while back as well, and I've just been pushing it off, but I may get around to it. So those last four are kind of honorable mentions on this list. They may still get reviews for this year. They may not. Regardless of if they do or not, they won't be on the list at the end of 2017. So there you have it. That's my unseen list for 2016. Hope you guys enjoyed it. The bottom 12, yes, we're returning to 12, not 5 like last year. And the top 12 are coming up next, so stay tuned for those. And until next time, we'll see you in 2017.